You are living by a rule book you never wrote. Right now, as you are watching this, there are invisible forces shaping every decision you make, every dream you pursue, and every fear that holds you back. And here's what makes this terrifying. These rules feel so natural, so obviously true, that you do not even recognize them as rules. You think they are just the way life works, but they are not. They are programming. And today, we are going to identify exactly which rules you have been obeying without your consent. And more importantly, I am going to show you how to rewrite the entire code. I want you to think about the last time you stopped yourself from doing something you genuinely wanted to do. Maybe it was asking for a raise. Maybe it was starting that business. Maybe it was just speaking up in a room full of people. In that moment, something stopped you. There was a voice, a feeling, an invisible wall, and you probably told yourself a story about why you could not do it. Not the right time, not qualified enough, people will judge me. But here is the truth that changes everything. That voice was not yours. That rule was not yours. You inherited it from someone else, probably decades ago, and you have been paying rent on a belief that was never meant to be permanent. Carl Jung talked about something he called the collective unconscious, this shared pool of human experience that shapes our instincts and patterns. But here is what Jung also understood. We do not just inherit universal human patterns. We inherit the specific fears, limitations, and survival strategies of our family, our culture, our generation. And these inherited patterns do not announce themselves. They disguise themselves as common sense. They disguise themselves as who you are. The first step to freedom is recognizing that much of what you call your personality is actually just trauma responses and borrowed beliefs dressed up in a costume of identity. So let me give you the framework we are working with today. I am going to walk you through 6 distinct signs that reveal when you are operating from someone else's rulebook. These are not abstract concepts. These are diagnostic tools. By the end of this, you will have a map of exactly where you have been unconsciously giving your power away, and you will have a concrete strategy to start reclaiming it immediately. Because here is what I know about you. You did not find this video by accident. Something in you is ready to wake up to a bigger version of yourself. Something in you is tired of playing small according to rules that were written by people who were playing small themselves. The first sign you are obeying rules you never chose is that your goals sound like someone else's voice. Listen to how you describe what you want in life. Do you say things like "I should probably," or "I am supposed to," or "a responsible person would"? That language is a red flag. Those phrases are not the language of authentic desire. They are the language of compliance. When you genuinely want something, you do not need to justify it with should. You do not need to wrap it in the approval of some abstract authority figure. You just want it because it calls to something real in you. Here is a simple test I want you to try. Think about 3 goals you are currently pursuing. Now ask yourself this question: if no one would ever know whether I achieve this or not, would I still want it? If the answer is no, you are not chasing a goal. You are chasing validation. You are trying to prove something to someone who might not even be alive anymore. And the energy of proving is fundamentally different from the energy of creating. When you are in proving mode, you are contracting. You are in scarcity. You are operating from a wound. When you are in creating mode, you are expanding. you are in abundance. You are operating from your actual power. The Stoics understood this distinction deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you must determine what is within your control and what is not, and direct all your energy toward the former. But here is what most people miss about that teaching. Your goals themselves must be examined. If your goal is to impress your father, you have placed your entire sense of success in someone else's hands. You have made your inner peace dependent on an outcome you cannot fully control. That is not ambition. That is psychological slavery. True ambition is pursuing something because the pursuit itself transforms you into who you want to become. The external result is almost secondary to the internal evolution. I worked with a client once who had spent 15 years building a career in law. She was successful by every external measure, partner at a major firm, 6-figure salary, all the prestige you could want. But she was miserable, completely hollowed out, and she could not understand why. She had done everything right. She had followed all the rules, and that was exactly the problem. When we dug into her story, we discovered that she had chosen law because her mother had always talked about how lawyers were respected, how they had power, how they could not be dismissed. Her mother had felt powerless her whole life, so her daughter absorbed a rule that said, safety equals being undismissible. The entire career was built on her mother as wound, not her own genuine calling. The moment she recognized this, everything shifted. She did not quit her job the next day. That is not how real transformation works. But she started asking different questions. She started listening for her own voice underneath all the noise. The second sign you are obeying rules you never chose is that you feel guilty for things that harm no one. This is one of the most insidious forms of inherited programming. You feel bad about wanting more money. You feel selfish for wanting time alone. You feel guilty for saying no to people who drain you. But ask yourself, who is actually being hurt here? In most cases, the answer is no one. You have internalized a moral framework that treats your own needs as somehow dangerous or wrong. And this keeps you small, keeps you accommodating, keeps you safe in a cage that does not even have a lock on it. From a Jungian perspective, this guilt often comes from the shadow, those parts of yourself that you have been taught to reject. Maybe you were told that ambition is arrogance. Maybe you learned that wanting pleasure is shameful. Maybe your family punished confidence and rewarded self-sacrifice. Whatever the specific programming, the result is the same. Parts of your full humanity got pushed into darkness, and now they do not go away. They just operate unconsciously, creating internal conflict, self-sabotage, and this vague sense that something is wrong with you for wanting what you want. Here is the truth that sets you free. Healthy desire is not your enemy. Wanting abundance is not greed. Wanting recognition is not vanity. Wanting rest is not laziness. These are natural human impulses that serve your growth and expansion. The question is not whether to have these desires. The question is whether you will own them consciously or let them drive you from the shadows. When you suppress your genuine desires, they do not disappear. They come out sideways. They become resentment toward people who have what you want. They become passive-aggressive comments. They become mysterious exhaustion that has no medical explanation. Integration, not suppression, is the path to power. The abundance mindset we talk about in manifestation work is not some trick to get more stuff. It is a recognition that the universe is not a zero-sum game. Your success does not require someone else's failure. Your happiness does not steal from a limited pool. When you truly embody this, the guilt dissolves. Not because you have rationalized it away, but because you have seen through the scarcity myth that created it. You were taught to feel guilty because someone believed there was not enough. They were wrong. There is enough. And you taking your share does not diminish anyone. The third sign you are obeying rules you never chose is that you automatically defer to authority figures. I want you to notice something about your own behavior patterns. When someone with a title speaks, do you automatically assume they know more than you? When an expert makes a claim, do you believe it without question? When someone older or more successful gives you advice, do you follow it even when something inside you resists? This automatic deference is a sign that you have outsourced your inner authority. You have been trained to believe that validation comes from outside, that truth is determined by credentials, that you are not qualified to trust your own perception. Now, let me be clear about what I am not saying. I am not saying that expertise is meaningless. I am not saying you should reject all guidance and figure everything out alone. That is just rebellion, which is the opposite extreme of compliance. Both rebellion and compliance are reactions to external authority. Neither one is true self-mastery. What I am talking about is something different. I am talking about developing an internal compass that can receive information from outside sources without automatically submitting to it. I am talking about the ability to say, "That is interesting. Let me see if it is true in my experience." Machiavelli understood power dynamics in ways that make people uncomfortable, but his insights remain relevant. He observed that those who hold power often maintain it, not through force, but through the appearance of legitimacy. They wear the costumes of authority, and everyone around them plays along. But here is what Machiavelli also knew. Legitimacy is a social agreement, not an objective fact. The moment you stop automatically deferring, you begin to see that most authority is theatrical. This does not mean you disrespect it. It means you see it clearly. And from that clarity, you can make conscious choices about when to follow and when to forge your own path. The practical tool here is what I call the validation pause. The next time someone in authority tells you something, especially about yourself or what you should do, practice pausing before you respond. Take 3 seconds. In those 3 seconds, check in with your own body. Does this resonate? Does this land as true? Or am I just agreeing because I have been trained to agree? This simple pause begins to rewire the automatic deference pattern. You start to recognize that your inner knowing is also a form of data, and in matters of your own life, it is often the most important data you have. The fourth sign you are obeying rules you never chose is that you feel trapped by commitments you made unconsciously. Maybe you said yes to a relationship because you thought that was what you were supposed to do at that age. Maybe you bought a house in a place you do not even like because that was the next logical step. Maybe you committed to a lifestyle that requires so much maintenance that you have no space left for actual living. These unconscious commitments stack up over time, and eventually you wake up one day feeling like your entire life is a prison built from your own compliant choices. Here is the thing about commitments. They are supposed to be conscious. A real commitment is a choice you make with full awareness of what you are taking on and why. But most of us did not make conscious commitments. We sleepwalked into obligations because they were expected. We said yes to avoid the discomfort of saying no. We built lives that look good on paper, but feel suffocating in practice. And now we feel trapped because we told ourselves that once you commit, you cannot change your mind. That rule, the rule that says commitment is permanent and sacred regardless of context, is one of the most destructive beliefs you can carry. It keeps people in marriages that are slowly killing them. It keeps people in careers that drain their life force. It keeps people loyal to friendships that stopped being mutual years ago. Commitment is valuable, but only conscious commitment. A commitment you made from a state of unconsciousness, fear, or social pressure does not have the same weight. You are allowed to renegotiate. You are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to honor who you are becoming, even if it means releasing who you used to be. The Stoics had a concept they called preferred indifference. These were things that were good to have but not essential to a good life. Health was a preferred indifferent. Wealth was a preferred indifferent. Even relationships were preferred indifference. This does not mean they did not value these things. It means they held them loosely. They did not let their identity become dependent on maintaining specific external circumstances. This is the mindset shift that frees you from unconscious commitments. You can prefer to keep them if they serve you, but you are not chained to them. Your inner peace, your sense of self, your fundamental okayness does not collapse if circumstances change. I want to give you a practice called the commitment audit. Take out a piece of paper or open a note on your phone and list every major commitment you are currently carrying. Your job, your relationships, your living situation, your financial obligations, your memberships and subscriptions. Everything. Now, next to each one, write one of two labels. Either I chose this consciously, and it still serves me, or this was inherited or defaulted into and needs examination. You might be surprised at how much of your life falls into that second category. And this is not about immediately quitting everything. It is about seeing clearly. Because when you see clearly, you can begin to make real choices. The fifth sign you are obeying rules you never chose is that you are more afraid of success than failure. This one is subtle, and most people will never admit it, but it is incredibly common. You say you want to succeed. You say you want abundance. But there is a part of you that quietly sabotages every time you get close. You procrastinate right before the breakthrough. You pick fights with people who could help you. You find reasons why now is not the right time. And if you are honest, there is almost a relief when things do not work out, because at least you are safe. Safe from what? Safe from change. Safe from being visible. Safe from discovering what you are actually capable of. Safe from outgrowing the people around you. Safe from becoming someone your old self would not recognize. This is shadow work at its deepest level. Somewhere in your history you learned that success is dangerous. Maybe you watched someone you loved get punished for standing out. Maybe your family had an unspoken rule that nobody gets too big. Maybe you absorbed a cultural message that says, "Who do you think you are?" And now that programming runs quietly in the background, sabotaging your conscious desires with unconscious fear. The manifestation community talks a lot about alignment, about getting your thoughts and feelings to match what you want to attract. But alignment is not just about thinking positive thoughts. Real alignment requires integrating the parts of you that are terrified of getting what you want. It requires sitting with those fears without trying to fix or bypass them. It requires asking that scared part of you what it needs to feel safe enough to let you expand. Here is what I have learned from doing this work myself and with hundreds of clients. The fear of success is always about identity. You have built a self-concept around being the person who struggles, the person who almost makes it, the person who has potential, and success would destroy that identity. You would have to become someone new. That is terrifying to the ego, which wants to maintain its current form at all costs. But here is the invitation. What if becoming someone new is exactly what you came here to do? What if your current identity is just a chrysalis, and you have been mistaking the cocoon for the destination? The power dynamic at play here is internal. There is a part of you that wants to expand, and there is a part of you that wants to stay safe. These parts are at war, and the part that wants safety has been winning because it has been operating unconsciously. The moment you make this dynamic conscious, you shift the balance of power. You can begin to reassure the fearful part that you will take care of it even as you grow. You can begin to prove through small actions that success does not mean abandonment, does not mean attack, does not mean losing yourself. Each time you let yourself succeed a little without collapsing, you build evidence that it is safe to succeed more. The sixth sign you are obeying rules you never chose is that you have a fundamental belief that you must earn your worth. This is perhaps the most pervasive and damaging rule that most humans carry. Somewhere along the way, you absorb the idea that you are not inherently valuable, that your worth must be constantly proven through achievement, sacrifice, or the approval of others. This belief is a virus that infects everything. It makes you exhausted because you can never rest. It makes you anxious because you are constantly monitoring whether you have done enough. It makes you resentful because no amount of earning seems to secure the worthiness you are seeking. The truth is that your worth is not something you earn. It is something you are. This is not some feel-good affirmation designed to make you feel better in the moment. It is a metaphysical reality. You did not have to audition for existence. You did not submit an application that was reviewed and approved. You emerge from the same creative force that makes everything, and your being here is not a mistake that requires justification. Every spiritual tradition, if you go deep enough, points to this same truth. You are a manifestation of something infinite, temporarily taking this particular form, and that manifestation needs no external validation to be complete. Now, your ego will resist this teaching because the ego is built on earning. The ego loves the game of proving and achieving and comparing. Telling the ego that you are already worthy is like telling a fish that water exists. The ego cannot quite see it because it is so fundamental to its operating system. But you are not your ego. You are the awareness that can observe your ego. And from that awareness, you can recognize that the earning game was never necessary. It was just a game you agreed to play because everyone around you was playing it too. The practical application of this understanding is what I call the worthiness reset. At least once a day, ideally in the morning, before you start producing and achieving, take 30 seconds to simply exist. Do not plan. Do not evaluate. Do not try to improve yourself. Just be. Feel your body breathing without any effort from you. Feel your heart beating without your permission. Notice that you are alive without having done anything to earn it in this moment. This practice is simple, but it begins to decouple your sense of worth from your productivity. Over time, you start to rest in a more fundamental identity that does not need constant proof. So let me bring all of this together for you. We have looked at 6 signs: goals that sound like someone else's voice, guilt for harmless desires, automatic deference to authority, unconscious commitments, fear of success, and the belief that you must earn your worth. These are not separate problems. They are all symptoms of the same root condition. You have been living inside a structure of rules that was given to you before you had the capacity to evaluate it, and you have been mistaking that structure for reality itself. The path to self-mastery is not about destroying all rules. That would just be chaos. The path is about becoming conscious of the rules you are operating under, examining whether they serve who you are becoming, and deliberately choosing which ones to keep and which ones to release. This is what Jung meant by individuation. This is what the Stoics meant by living according to nature. This is what all genuine spiritual work points toward. You becoming fully yourself, not the self that was handed to you, but the self that you consciously create from authentic materials. I promised you a concrete tool you can use today, so here it is. I call it the Rule Revelation Exercise, and you can do it in 10 minutes. Find a quiet place and ask yourself this question: what am I not allowed to do? Write down whatever comes up without filtering. I am not allowed to make more money than my father. I am not allowed to put my needs first. I am not allowed to be seen. I am not allowed to take up space. Whatever arises, write it down. These responses are your unconscious rulebook surfacing. Most people have never actually looked at these rules directly. They operate in the shadows, shaping behavior without examination. The moment you write them down, you have externalized them. They are no longer invisible prison walls. They are sentences on a page. And sentences can be questioned. Sentences can be edited. Sentences can be deleted entirely. For each rule you write, ask one follow-up question. According to who? Maybe the answer is your mother. Maybe it is your first boss. Maybe it is a religion you no longer practice. Maybe it is a culture you no longer belong to. Whatever the source, name it. Because once you see that a rule came from a specific human being with their own fears and limitations, it loses its absolute power. It transforms from cosmic law to human opinion, and you are free to hold a different opinion. The transformation you are seeking is not going to happen overnight. I am not going to lie to you about that. You have been carrying these rules for years, maybe decades. They are woven into your nervous system. They are embedded in your habits and relationships. Unwinding them takes time and patience and consistent attention. But here is what I can promise you. Once you start seeing, you cannot unsee. The matrix does not put itself back together once you have noticed the code. You will find yourself catching old patterns in real time. You will find yourself asking, "Is this mine?" before automatically reacting. You will find yourself making choices that your old self would have been too afraid to make. And each one of those choices builds momentum toward a life that is actually yours. The universe, however you understand it, is not asking you to be small. It is not asking you to follow rules written by frightened people who never did their own work. It is asking you to wake up and bring your full presence to this one precious life you have been given. Your expansion does not threaten the cosmic order. Your authentic power does not upset some divine balance. You becoming who you really are is exactly what you are here to do. Everything else has been preparation and often misdirection, but you found your way here to this moment, to this teaching. Something in you is ready. So here's my challenge to you. Before you watch another video, before you consume more information, do the rule revelation exercise. Actually do it. Write down what you're not allowed to do. See your invisible cage in black and white. Because understanding is not transformation. Information is not change. Action is change. And the action you take in the next hour after watching this will determine whether this becomes wisdom that transforms your life or content that entertains you for 20 minutes and then fades. You have been obeying rules you never chose, but that ends when you decide it ends. Not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect. Now, in this moment, with whatever messy circumstances you are currently navigating, you reclaim your power by using it. You remember who you are by acting like it. And you break free from the inherited cage by walking through the door that was never actually locked. This has been a conversation between us, not a lecture from me to you. I have carried these same patterns. I have obeyed these same invisible rules. I have felt the same frustration of living a life that looked right but felt wrong. And I can tell you from the other side of that awakening that it is worth every uncomfortable moment of truth-telling it takes to get free. You are not broken. You were just handed a faulty map. And now you know. Now you can draw a new one.